Good morning, World History. Day 12, Digital Learning. It's Tuesday, March 31st. Hope you're doing well. We're in the last unit of the Middle Ages. We've talked a lot about things that are transforming and transpiring since the fall of the Roman Empire. We've looked at the church and state. We've seen how, these Germanic individuals come in and kind of start taking over, basically proving to us kind of how civilizations not only emerge but also disappear from the annals of history. And today we're going to be talking about something that unfortunately is becoming very, very familiar to us, and that involves war but also plague. And I think it's important to understand that you've heard of the Black Death or the bubonic plague, and that's where we kind of need to begin our study, if you will, today. Now, as we move forward, we've already talked about the church, so you can go back and look at the previous lecture to understand how the church declined, and we talked about the Great Schism that took place. So you can find all of that in the previous lessons that we discussed. But today I want us to look at something that happened in the early 1440s, and it's known as the Black Plague, and it is something that will kill 1/3 of the European population. Now, put that in numbers back then, that's 20 million people that were not just affected by this plague, but were killed by this plague. This plague basically will strike China and India, Persia, Syria, Egypt, before it makes its way to Europe through fleas and rats that are aboard these ships. I'll give you an illustration. In 1347, it was October, there were these 12 ships that docked in Italy. And so people went to the docks and they were ready to welcome their sailors home. They were ready, they had been gone for so long. And so as they arrived at the docks to wait for the people to get off the ship, they were horrified. Most of the sailors that were on the ships were dead. Those who were alive, they had these black boils that were all over their skin that were oozing blood and pus. And so all of a sudden, Italy says, get these ships out of here. It basically sends these death ships out, but it was too late, because that is kind of how the plague makes its way onto European soil. And Europeans had never seen anything like this. They were unprepared. They didn't know how they were going to do this. I mean, you had some of these boils that would go to the size of an apple today. There were others that were the size of an egg, and they were just horrendous looking, and they smelled. And people who had these boils, people who were infected with the Black Plague. Bubonic plague, they were caught with chills and fever and vomiting, terrible aches and pains, and it would basically just strike fear in so many people. Was there an opportunity for you to survive it? Really, pretty much no, because 3/4 of the people that caught the disease would basically die from this. And just notice that 38 million Europeans out of 75 died by the end of this. When it's all said and done, we'll start seeing it starts out with 20 million, but then it just rapidly increases. And the Black Death was contagious. I mean, some people said that it was the mere touching of the clothes that would allow somebody to get the disease. And they didn't know how it was transmitted from one patient to the other. They didn't know how to prevent it. They didn't know how to treat it. And it just seemed to be in the air. And so doctors they start to refuse to see patients. You've got priests that are refusing to administer, the last rites before somebody dies. You've got shopkeepers who are closing their stores, people fleeing the city, going for the countryside. This would affect cows and sheep, goats and pigs and chickens. Therefore, it's causing famine. So this is just a terrible situation. And a lot of people thought that the Black Death was kind of like this divine punishment, that It was God punishing the people because of their sin, because of greed, blasphemy, or whatever it might be. And the only way that they would be able to overcome this was to win or to earn God's forgiveness. And so, one of the ways that they start doing this is they start getting rid of the people that they think are causing the problems, especially the Jewish people. And between 1348 and 1349, we've got many Jews. This is kind of the start, if you will, of the persecution of Jews in Europe. Jews are blamed. They have a different religion, they have a different faith, and so they're blamed, they're persecuted, they're massacred because they've got to blame somebody. And so the European people believe that it's the Jewish fault. The Catholic Church, they can't do anything to stop it, and people start questioning God. They start questioning the priest because they're praying, they're doing everything right. They think that God's against them, and so the church starts to lose prestige and power. So you've got the Black Plague, which is drastically transforming Europe. And if you look at this in today's society with the coronavirus that has taken place, notice how we've got people blaming one another. We've got people that are fleeing the city or sheltering in place. We've got people who are losing faith in the church because, they're wondering, why is all of this happening? So we can see kind of just a small sampling of the terror that was taking place during this time as it relates to the Black Plague. And so neighbors fighting neighbors, and it's just turmoil, and it's just really, really a difficult time period during this area. So while we're dealing with the Black Plague, we've also got to remind ourselves that there's this war that's going on. And it's going to be between the English and the French. And we talked about in a previous lesson how these guys are still fighting each other. And this will be the deadliest struggle of the Middle Ages. And it starts out with understanding that the King of England at this time, his name is Edward III. And he had a mother whose name was Isabella. And he thought that he was the rightful heir to the French crown. Now, yes, he was from England, but he thought that, because of family relations, that he should be king, especially the fact when King Charles IV of France dies without a male heir. So there's no male heir in France. Edward III of England says, well, it should be me, so I'm just going to take over and go over there and claim it. By the way, at this time, Edward III is your age. He's 15 years of age when he decides that he needs to be king, that he should be the king of France. And so what he does is he says, I want to be king. The people of France say, no, we don't want you to be king. Rather, we're going to choose Philip. Philip VI is who we want. And so Edward III gets mad, and basically he decides to invade France and prove to people that he should be the king. Well, as you can see, this is a war. It's known as the 100 Years' War, but a great trick question that is always given is, so the 100 Years' War lasted 100 years? And the answer is no. The 100 Years' War lasted 116 years. But who wants to say that, let's talk about the 116-year war? That just doesn't sound right. So, historians have just long said, okay, we're just going to call it the 100-year war. Well, there's new technology that is used. We've got longbows and crossbows, which is changing war strategy because now the weapons can fire faster, they can fire longer, and so you start seeing different military strategies take place. Here's just a little sampling of kind of how people are fighting. You can see with the bows that are being used in this. And just notice, if you will, you've got, here's England and what they control as part of France. There's England up there. This is in 1337. And then notice Edward III and his group. Notice how they start wanting to take more and more of France. And then we have in 1429, we have more of this area, Normandy, and up top here, France. And then, of course, at the end of the war, as you can see, in the English mind, all of this was fought for nothing, as basically they lose everything they had and then some, because from the beginning of the war, they had this little section, but now they have nothing. Well, it lasts 100 years, 116 years. And, I just wanted to share with you that during this time period, This war does stop because of the Black Plague. So there are times in which, we can't really fight. There's no fighting going on because they've got to take care of their countries. But it's a very interesting war, especially because of one of the individuals who's a part of this war. And that individual, her name is Joan of Arc. You've heard of Joan of Arc. She grew up in a small town in France to a father who was a farmer. She worked on the farm. She learned how to sew. She was very, very religious. And at about age of 12, she began hearing voices. And she had a vision. She saw Michael the archangel. And he told her at the age of 12 that she was going to lead the French in a battle against the English, and that she was going to not only lead the French in a battle, she was going to be victorious, and then it was going to be her job to take the king of France to be crowned at a particular location. So at the age of 16, she decided she had heard a lot of these visions, she had heard the voices, and she said, I need to do something about it. And so she wants to go talk to the king, who at the time is King Charles VII. But she's thinking, well, how am I, first of all, going to get an army to defeat the English? How am I going to get the king to give me an army? How do I do this? So she went and talked to the king. And, at first the king was like suspicious. Do I really trust her? I don't know if I should trust her. I don't know if she's really going to be good enough to do this. But he says, you know what? I'll give you a chance. So he gives her a group of soldiers and supplies and said, I want you to go and I want you to take a city known as Orleans, or like what we know of today, New Orleans. He said, I want you to go and take that city. Well, she goes. She takes her army. She's had visions. And the news of Joan of Arc and the news of her religious visions was pretty popular during this time. And so the French thought that maybe God was going to save them from the English. And so when Joan arrived, the people greeted her with cheering, with celebrations. They were excited. And she launched an attack against the English forces, and she was wounded. But she didn't stop fighting. She stayed there with her troops. She kept fighting. She kept pushing, and she encouraged them to fight harder. And sure enough, she won the Battle of Orleans, which was part one of her mission, right? The angel had said, you will be victorious. You will drive the English out. But remember, the other thing she needed to do was to lead Charles to a city to be crowned. And so she goes and gets the king, and they begin to make their way to the city, and the people are loving her, and they're excited for her, and everything is going really well until she's captured in another battle. She's captured. The English will hold Joan of Arc as prisoner, and they're going to give her a trial to prove that she was a religious heretic, that she was crazy, that having voices, that she was just really, really messed up. So they questioned her over the course of several days, and they were trying to find something that would deserve death. And they couldn't find anything. They couldn't find anything. The only thing that they found wrong with her is that she had cut her hair and she had dressed like a man so that she could gain popularity, so she could gain confidence from soldiers. People were going to be more willing to fight someone who looked more like a man rather than a woman. And so that's the only thing they could basically find her guilty of. And they said that was enough to deserve death. And so they announced her to be guilty. And Joan of Arc will be burned alive at the stake. She was asked for a cross. She asked for a cross before she died. She was given a small wooden cross. And there are witnesses today who said that as she was dying, she asked people to pray for her, and she forgave her accusers. This is pretty powerful, especially with the fact that she did all of this and lost her life at the age of 19, burned at the stake for fighting at the age of 19. Now, just one last thing. It was said that she was offered life imprisonment if she would just proclaim guilt. Just say you're guilty and we'll give you life in prison. However, she said, no, I can't do that. I can't turn my back against God. I must believe what God has told me. This is who I am. And so that is why she was sent to the stake, because she was solid in her faith. Another reminder that you do what you believe. You fight for what you believe. and you remain strong for it. Powerful stories about the plague, about Joan of Arc, that lead us to the end of the Middle Ages.